Hello traders, this is CloudChartist. Welcome to my weekly Ichimoku wrap for the week ending October 23rd. We'll get started with the ES. We see that the ES changed in its general trend in Ichimoku terms from neutral, where it was inside the cloud last week, to bullish as it broke out above the cloud. You see I'm put in a close above the cloud. We see that also the Chikou, this red line over here representing price action, time shifted 26 periods into the past, so 26 weeks in this case, came up and found resistance at the Tenkan-sen here, which you can see if you move over to the right here, is where we reversed on Friday afternoon and took a few ticks off from the high of Friday afternoon's price action, which is not at all surprising given the huge move we made that people might want to either get short or take profits on their long trade. So moving forward, we still have that Tenkan-sen area to be concerned with, around 2074.50. And after we get above that area, actually it's going to be slightly higher. It's going to be around 2076, because you can see in the next week the Tenkan-sen is slightly higher. Around 2076 we can expect to find a little bit of resistance. And then we have the candles to deal with, and I'm just talking only about the Chikou right now because current price action over here has nothing to interact with to keep it from moving higher. So I'm looking at the Chikou. That whatever happens with the Chikou happens with current price action and vice versa. The Chikou represents current price action, but one of the wonderful things about Ichimoku charts is that we have the Chikou to interact with prior elements, which gives us a little edge. So overall, this chart is fully bullish, except for the fact that the Chikou is stuck under the candles and the Tenkan-sen still. In order for the chart to be completely bullish, we need the Chikou to be over the candles. We also would be preferable to have a bull-crossed Tenkan-sen. The Tenkan-sen is the blue line here. We would like that to be crossed on top of the Kijun-sen rather than under as it is right now. So if we do see downside price action rather than upside price action, we can expect to find support at the cloud. The next candle will be open in this area, so the cloud will be supportive at around 2058.25. So look for that as a potential support level to buy for higher prices. And then if we move back into the cloud, we can look at prior levels of support and resistance. Like the first one I see that's real obvious is the 2026.50, which was prior resistance the week before, and obviously a pivotal level. If you are trading it, you notice that. And then 2023.80 and the 2014 level was significant as we were moving upwards, and I won't go any further in other levels to the downside because we're looking at the weekly now, and really those levels are more like daily levels or intraday levels. So if we do move higher, what do we have ahead of us for resistance? Well, we do have the bottom of this candle, which is, the Chikou is going to be over to the right, so it's going to be interacting with this candle. We do have the bottom of the candle here at, let's see, that's at 2102.25. So we can look at that as potential resistance area. You see that around that 2100 level is significant and was significant previously. You can see how many times candles were unable to get above that 2100 level in the past. So that's definitely going to be a problem for us, or a potential resistance area. And we also have the 2090, so it's maybe 2090.50 area, where these two candles were unable to get over before the sell-off happened. So keep that in mind as well. You have this, some smaller levels. Oh, and this gap, I would not say is uninteresting. In fact, I would mark it, and the way I mark gaps in Ichimoku terms is by drawing a rectangle like this, gaps in Ichimoku are called windows. So, you know, technically we did fill this gap, but I think it's still significant that this 2095.50 level might be in play also. So that's about it for the ES, but you know your bias has to be bullish. Let's look at the Russell. Oops, not Thai capital. Not Ford either. The Russell is not as bullish as the ES. It is technically neutral in Ichimoku terms. In fact, it's been sort of leading us to the downside intraday. It's been very heavy. Really having a very tough time getting over this 1160 area. You can see multiple rejections for many weeks of this 1160 area. That said, it is putting in a bit of an inverse head and shoulders, and where that's sort of difficult to see on the weekly time frame, you can sort of see it as illustrated in the Chikou here, this pattern, with a neckline, you know, right at the resistance level, right around 1160. So if we do move higher, we can expect to potentially find resistance at the Kijun Sen here on the Russell at 1181.90. I'm actually pretty interested in getting long the Russell because I do feel it's been lagging the other indexes, and there's maybe potentially better opportunity. And the way I don't really like trading the Russell intraday, I consider it to be a bit psychotic. So I'm kind of looking at potentially buying some TNA calls, maybe some IWM calls. But you know, we're not bullish yet. We have ways to go before we're bullish on the Russell, because once we get over the Kijun Sen resistance, if we get over the Kijun Sen resistance, we have resistance continuing until we get above the cloud, and that is not until about 1221.50. So that's a while yet that we have to go, but we could put in a move that big. You know, it's, you know, look at this move back here from from 2014, the October move. You know, put in these 3 giant candles. The Russell can move when it wants to. Let's look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ's looking fantastic. Very bullish. In fact, the NASDAQ has remained bullish throughout the whole correction as of late. The NASDAQ has remained in a bullish configuration, as it has not put in a close underneath the cloud at all. And last week was particularly big bullish candle for the NASDAQ, as tech stocks that reported, such as Google, and Amazon, you know, put in real rippers to the upside, you know, really helping out. And Microsoft, you know, positive earnings results, larger than expected moves. And when I say larger than expected, I'm talking about the larger moves than the options market priced in. So if you had a long call position, for instance, going into those earnings of those tickers, you would have made money. That's not always the case, and it's pretty risky to make those kind of bets, but indeed very good. And also, by the way, Apple has been ripping to the upside lately, in fact making a very strong move. I myself bought the dip on Apple and was disappointed. This was like 3 weeks ago. I bought 109, and I bought some calls, and you know, it didn't do anything, and then the last week it just took off. So congratulations to Apple holders and Apple options holders for the time being. We'll see what happens once we get into Apple earnings, however. But let's go back to the NASDAQ. So as far as what we have in store, we did get some profit taking or some potential short entries at the end of the day, at the end of the week. So we do have potential resistance above here at the prior resistance area around 46.55, let's call it, thereabouts, 46.56.50, where we might find some resistance, might find a double top type situation, or we could go higher. The shape of the cloud ahead suggests that there could be a potential for sideways price action, as the cloud is very rectangular, as you see into the end of the year. There's a little bit of a bump up here, but in the beginning of the year, the cloud takes off to the upside again. So we could have some, sideways price action for the NASDAQ, maybe continuing to find resistance, or it could just move up. We'll see. As far as the configuration of the Kijun Sen and the Tenkan Sen, the Kijun Sen is still bear crossed over the Tenkan Sen, but the Tenkan Sen is making a move up to try to get a bull cross, and I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I would expect a bull cross on the open of the new weekly candle, as this is such a huge bullish candle that the momentum will definitely probably ask for a bull cross here. And as the Tenkan Sen bull crosses over the Kijun Sen and perhaps breaks out of the cloud, it will offer support for price moving forward. If we look at the RSI, we see that we're nowhere near overbought, even though there's been such a strong bullish move to the upside. Let's look at the YM, the Dow. The Dow is still neutral and lagging a bit to the ES and the NASDAQ, but not quite as much of a lag as the Russell. The Dow is neutral as it's still inside the cloud. It was unable to break out of the cloud. You can see this significant prior resistance level, which coincides with the top of the cloud around 17,690 thereabouts. The top of the cloud, however, next week is going to be quite a bit higher. It's going to be at 17738 or thereabouts. We also have some resistance for the Chikou. As the Chikou moves higher, we have resistance at the Tenkan Sen up here at around 17,863, and then at the bottom of this candle, which is at 17,941. So those are some other levels. Then we do have this, the 18,008 prior resistance level, which is significant. If you look horizontally, there's been a lot of trouble getting over that. I called it 18,008, but we could be all the way up to 18,050, 18,050. Could be a area of resistance going forward for the Dow. If we do get a close next week over the cloud, we can talk. The Dow will be bullish like the ES and the NASDAQ. Let's move on to gold. Sorry for the heavy sigh there. Gold has been, pretty crazy, I would say. Last week, some very erratic moves. As we got the ECB announcement last week and the dollar ripped, we got a really strange move where gold ripped to the upside and then proceeded to sell off for the rest of the day on Friday, putting in a close beneath the daily Tenkan Sen, but a sort of passive inside candle, I would say, with a small topping tail and a small bottoming tail. We didn't come all the way down to the Kijun Sen, but if we do move lower, we can expect a potential test of the Kijun Sen and potentially support at 1152.20. And if we are unable to hold support at 1152.20, we can look for support at the Tenkan Sen below at 1144.70. If you want to be bullish on gold, you can, but in Ichimoku terms, gold is still bearish. It's been bearish under the cloud for a very long time. The last time gold was bullish in Ichimoku terms was in 2012. Hello. Back here when I put in the high. Otherwise, it's been bearish under the cloud on the weekly time frame. So if gold does move higher, you can expect to find resistance at the cloud at 1200, and obviously 1200 is, or it's actually 1201 is the cloud, but 1200 has been an issue for gold for a long time. So, and that's about it. Let's look at silver. Another wacky one intraday. I have been, pretty successfully fading the $16 level and fading all pops and gold pretty easily, pretty successfully, with a few exceptions to insane erratic 15-cent stop runs. but we won't talk about that now. Just talk about the fact that silver is bearish under the cloud. The fact that it put in a very similar candle to last week, but a red candle, and put in a close underneath the Kijun-sen means it does not have support of the Kijun-sen, and the chances are good that it might come to, trade in this range between the Kijun-sen at 1584 and the Tenkan-sen at 1505. So maybe some price action between those two levels, unless it can get back over the Kijun-sen. Then it still has a small area of range for it to trade in. 1622 is pretty much as high as I would expect it to go. It could go all the way to the cloud, which is around 1634. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to trading this range between the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen. And if things, if the dollar breaks out higher to the upside, which looks pretty much like it should. I mean, the dollar's been extremely strong, but and I'll get to the dollar chart shortly. But if we do get some more strength out of the dollar, it's possible that silver could sell all the way back down to 1505. Let's look at some treasuries. Let's look at the dollar first. Why not get it out of the way since I've been talking about it? So, pardon my little trend line here, but you can see why it's significant as we did break over that trend line. The dollar wasn't looking that great prior to this week. In fact, the last 2 weeks it had been in this downtrend, and 2 weeks ago went from bullish to neutral as it closed inside the cloud. Put in this potential hammer, potential reversal pattern I talked about last week, but was still neutral inside the cloud, and then boom, rocket ship blasted out of the cloud and over this downtrend line. We do have, this slightly above, we have a prior resistance, support turns resistance level around 97.60, so we can look for potential resistance up there. You see that these candles all pivoted in that approximately that area, maybe 97.85, between 97.50, 97.85 area. So we can look to that to provide potential resistance, and then we can look to the top of these candles, maybe the 98.50 area to potentially provide resistance, but really, the dollar is just bullish. Moving on, let's take a look at let's look at some treasury bonds. We're looking at ZB here on the weekly time frame. Let me zoom in. So ZB last week put in a reversal to the downside. Let's get even a little bit closer. You can see that overall ZB has been quite bullish, remaining above the cloud, coming down, testing the cloud here, and moving higher. Moving back over the Tenkan-sen, getting a bull cross right here, and the Tenkan-sen's been acting as support all along. Each candle has managed to bounce from the Tenkan-sen level, which is 156.21 currently, and that was also the case last week, but we did close on the lows after retesting the low of 156.18. We closed at 157.01, so we did hold the Tenkan-sen once again. So basically, we've just been moving sideways and frustrating both the bulls and the bears, putting in some very, bearish day with a lot of selling overnight. Then, bearish week with a lot of selling. Then a bullish week, and now a bearish week again. And the correlations in treasury bonds have been a bit bizarre. There's been this Buy America bid going on lately where the dollar, the ES, and treasury bonds all seem to be moving upwards at the same time. It's been strange. But so currently ZB is bullish still because it is basically holding the top of the cloud. Let's zoom in a little bit closer to see. Well, not really. I mean, the close is slightly under the top of the cloud. If you can see this overlap here, basically it's holding the top of the cloud. But so moving forward, the next candle will be over here. So the cloud will be partly at the same level as it is at now and was at the close of last week, but then moving forward, the cloud is sloping downwards. In fact, this is the peak of the cloud right here. So if indeed the 30-year Treasury bond continues to follow the contour of the cloud, we could be in for a dip down for the next few weeks, perhaps into the end of the year, which is over here. You see this consistent slope downwards. This will be also dependent on whether or not we can hold the Tenkan-sen, and whether or not the Tenkan-sen continues to move sideways. If the Tenkan-sen, if we do get some bidding in the Treasury bonds and the Tenkan-sen tips up, it could support price despite the contour of the cloud. Let me zoom back out. I mean, let's look at a bigger picture. I mean, this is obviously in some sort of triangle type pattern. I could draw it. I've done this a few times. I don't really like to use the wicks when I draw my triangles. Maybe you do. Maybe this is a tough one. We could do that, I guess. We could do another trend line like that, something. You know, so definitely, I feel that we are looking for a strong move since we've been, you know, trading in a tighter, more tight range lately. So you can tell the tight range by the shape of the Chikou as well. So we'll see what happens. Let's see. I'm still not quite used to the new Thinkorswim stuff. But overall, we're still bullish. So until we lose the cloud and the Tenkan-sen and move back into the cloud, if we do, we're bullish until we become neutral. And if we do get some sustained selling, we have the bottom of the cloud support at 150.17. That's quite a ways down from here, but keep that in mind. Let's move on to the 10-year. 10-year looking similar, but a bit more chaotic, if you ask me, than the 30-year. I mean, really, in the 10-year, it looks kind of to me like maybe I shouldn't be even doing this kind of trend line analysis in my Ichimoku video, but it looks kind of like we already broke out from a triangle type situation to the upside. And we're sort of flagging above that, but disregard that. Remove. There we go. Let's just talk about the Ichimoku factors. So I'm going to zoom in so it's easier to see. One interesting thing is the Chikou over here. The red line is a little bit hard to see because it's stuck in the underneath these candles. It's coming into support at the Kijun-sen here, which means it could potentially bounce higher, and current price could also bounce higher. And also the current candle did, although it is in a downtrend, putting in a lower high and a lower low, it did find support at the Tenkan-sen. In fact, the Tenkan-sen is at 128.085. And the low was at 128.090, so just one tick above the Tenkan-sen is where it decided to reverse. But it only reversed a little bit and just closed just slightly off the lows. So if we do move lower, we do have support at the Tenkan-sen and also at the top of the cloud at 128, like say 128.05, 055 maybe, 05 I would say. And then if the Chikou manages to find support at the Tenkan-sen down here, we could find support for current price at 127.31 or 128-ish, which is also a prior resistance level. That's possible, but that would be then we'd be moving into neutral territory, and if we do get into neutral territory, we're going to be in this very rectangular shaped cloud for a while between a flat Tenkan-sen and a flat Kijun-sen below. So if we do get down into the cloud, we could be just in a ping pong ball bouncing type consolidation pattern. So we'll see. We'll see when we get there what happens. We do have, a flat cloud for until the end of November, and then a cliff into the Christmas. So both the if you want to believe in a traditional correlation between risk on for equities and selling in the T-Plex, this might indicate a Santa rally, but that is just a guess. We do have a cloud twist here right around Christmas time, actually. And then moving forward into the new year, we have a flat cloud offering us solid support around 127. 127.10. All right, let's move on to some grains, shall we? Let's get corn. Corn tried to get bullish in the middle of the week. In fact, the daily looked like we were in an uptrend, and then kind of got the smackdown. And if you were trading, intraday, but keeping aware of the weekly, you would remember that we do have weekly Tenkan-sen resistance at 380.13, and we did put in a close at 380 under the weekly Tenkan-sen. So it did, in fact, act as solid resistance for corn. We did put in, a lower high and a lower low, so we're still in a downtrend. But it is a spinning top type doji type candle, so not really saying a lot. We've been getting no shortage of those in corn. Like we had a string of them over here. Just sort of then, got a drop lower and put in some more indecisive candles down here. So for now, corn is bearish under the cloud, and we're looking at resistance at the Tenkan-sen above, and then if we manage to break through the resistance at the Tenkan-sen above, we do have resistance at the cloud above, which next week's candle is going to be around 382.90. If we manage to break into the cloud and back into neutral territory, we of course have some gaps to fill. We have this area, which is a big gap, like up to 402.25. As potential fill, but before that we have the Kijun-sen at 450. Let's look at soybeans. Soybeans put in a bearish looking candle after breaking over the Tenkan-sen and putting in a very large topping tail. We didn't make any progress. As far as we weren't able to sustain progress and put a lower high in, so an inside candle last week. We did, however, manage to hold above the Tenkan-sen. So for now, although we're still overall bearish on soybeans, the fact that we're holding the Tenkan-sen gives bulls some amount of hope that the bottom is in, and we can look to find support at 886.50 if we do trade lower. Let's look at oats. Oats basically put in the opposite candle of last week, a hammer type candle, but a red hammer, and last week was the inverse hammer. Lower high, lower low. We did break below the Tenkan-sen, but we did manage to hold the Tenkan-sen, so that's slightly hopeful. And a hammer is a hammer. So if we do go higher, we will. We do have this gap to fill up here at up to 240.25. Then we do have resistance at the Kijun-sen above at 246.75, but that would be a pretty significant move higher, which, given the small range that oats have been trading in, I wouldn't necessarily expect it, but we'll see. I'm not currently aware of what reports are coming up for grains. I didn't bother checking, so apologize for that. Let's look at wheat. Wheat is last week's candle for wheat was unable to sustain above the Tenkan-sen, and or 2 weeks ago, and then last week's candle put in a doji, long-legged type doji candle with a break over the Tenkan-sen, but then a close under the Tenkan-sen. So it could be we could get a reversal up to the upside. We have been oscillating here on the wheat for a while. This looks like a big head and shoulders, but of course we're at the bottom of a trend, so the chances of that being the case are not good. We really wouldn't want to see wheat break down below the 467 level. So if we do move higher, 497.25 offers resistance, and if we do move lower, we could, potentially look for wouldn't call it a double bottom, but we've had prior support in the area of 467.50. Just a brief stop into bean oil. Bean oil put in a long, spinning top doji with a outside candle, higher high and a lower low. Still inside this range between the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen, so if we move lower, support could be found at 27.59. If we move higher, resistance could be found all the way up at 30.49. And overall bearish in Ichimoku terms for bean oil. What have I forgotten? Wheat, soy, oats. I think I got them. Let's look at coffee. Coffee looking quite bearish last week. Was put in a close underneath the Tenkan-sen the week before. It came up and tested slightly above. Let me zoom in. Tested slightly above I think it tested above the Tenkan-sen's at 126.07, and the open was at 126.10. So it did test just 3 ticks above the Tenkan-sen and then failed and sold off, and just a small amount of a bottoming tail at the bottom of last week's candle. So it looks likely that coffee could trade lower. In fact, it could break down to new lows below these prior lows, but I would look at potential for support coming in at around 116.60 thereabouts. And we wouldn't really want to see it go lower than that because it could be bad. We could look back to the 2013 potential areas of support coming in if we do lose these 116 area lows on coffee. I think it would be fun to just take a look at live cattle futures because they've been in a strong uptrend lately off the bottoms. Put in this very big bottoming candle in September. And then have been, after this very bullish candle closed over the Tenkan-sen, came up, found resistance at the Kijun-sen, and then gapped up over the Kijun-sen and is looking to move higher. So making, steady bullish progress. Overall still bearish, but making progress above these resistance levels. If we do continue to move higher, we have this prior resistance area that we're at right now. We do have this gap area that looks to be pretty much unfilled up to 147.30-ish. And if we do move higher, the Chikou will have interaction with this candle here if it does move significantly higher at 148.12 or 148.125. So we can look at potential resistance there, which is also sort of a horizontal resistance area as well. Then if continue to get a bid on live cattle futures, we do have the cloud above at 153.39, 153.40 area. Anyway, I'm going to end it there. Thank you for watching my weekly wrap-up. I do have a special on this week. For the rest of October, I'm offering my chat room subscription for $99 a month. You can come and check it out for 1 month for $99, and if you already trade a live futures account, I pretty much guarantee that I can hand you a trade where you'll make back that 99 bucks. You can find more information about that on my website at CloudChartist.com. Thank you for watching, and good luck trading next week.